It's confirmation that their loved one was abducted, murdered, and secretly buried. All too often, people don't know what actually happened, how their loved one became to be in this grave in the middle of nowhere.
Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, otherwise known as the Moor's murderers. Between 1963 and 1965, they lured 5 children to their deaths. They tortured and sexually assaulted them before burying at least 3 of the children on Saddleworth Moor.
Would you believe, just a few centimetres below the surface, we realised straight away that we'd hit something. I got down on one knee with an archaeological trowel, a pointing trowel, and almost instantly found a white stiletto shoe.
I'm Matt from Underworld Uncut, and this week we're speaking to former Detective Inspector Geoff Knupfer. In 1985, some 20 years after the initial investigation into Ian Brady and Myra Hindley, he reopened the case to try and find out what really happened to 2 missing children.
I was just a young kid at school, I think, when this first broke in 1965. Really didn't know more than anybody else did, other than read it in the paper and see it on television. But I think it certainly shocked Manchester. I mean, it was an horrific crime, or an horrific series of crimes, and it stunned everyone. No two ways about that. I think A, because it involved children. B, it involved a woman who was supporting or being involved had been involved in these events. And thirdly, of course, it was just after capital punishment had disappeared off the statute books. And there's no doubt about it in my mind that had these two committed these crimes a few years earlier, they would both have been hanged. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. I think the Hindley and Brady investigation had really been filed away on the basis that they had both got life sentences. It was generally accepted that neither of them would ever be released. The head of CID at the day was a guy called Peter Topping, Detective Chief Superintendent, and he had taken the decision to undertake a review of the Moor's case because of the 2 missing children, Pauline Reade and Keith Bennett. The decision was taken in 1966 by the powers that be that they wouldn't pursue these 2 cases. They'd been filed as no further action. I'm not sure that was appropriate, and it certainly wouldn't happen today, that is for sure. Peter quite rightly decided that we ought to have another look at the case. And I was tasked, along with a detective sergeant, of working to him, reviewing the case and making recommendations on how we could take the case forward. So I was very fortunate because there was a guy more senior to me who was also in that group, and as luck would have it, he got removed and taken off to another inquiry. So I kind of jumped up a leg, I suppose. So I've always considered myself very fortunate to end up in the position that I did on this inquiry, which was number 2 on it, of course. We recovered all the documents from the original inquiry, which were held by Cheshire Police, and we spent months going through all this, just 2 of us, going through all this paperwork, obviously in day-to-day contact with Peter Topping, head of CID, and obviously then going to try to find these witnesses who'd given evidence in the trial in the 1960s or provided information in the 1960s, trying to contact them, trying to locate them first and foremost, and then go and pick their brains again about what they thought, what they did, how they viewed the situation, and whether there was any intelligence or evidence to implicate Brady and Hindley in the cases of Pauline Reade and Keith Bennett. In terms of the missing children, obviously we tried to find the original missing person files, which were originally produced by Manchester City Police, a force that had long gone by that stage. And really went back through the details in those files, and then trying to connect them and the locations they had been with, I suppose, a form of geographical profiling, looking at where the kids were when they were last seen around and where Brady and Hindley might have been. And clearly there were geographical connections. Pauline Reade was a neighbour of Myra Hindley and her family, and Keith Bennett lived not too far away from Gorton, where clearly they were operating, and at some stage Brady was certainly associating with Myra Hindley, and I think probably stayed at the house as well. I think we were all pretty content that there was certainly strong suspicion that Brady and Hindley were involved in the disappearance of these two children. Really, where do we go from there? We talked to an awful lot of people. We also talked to the prison authorities, and we talked to the hospital authorities, because Brady had, by that time, been moved to Park Lane into the hospital or the health channel rather than the prison channel. And they started talking to us about how we might best deal with the matter, how controlling these two individuals were, and how we might overcome that problem. So those were the sort of conversations we were having. We were also looking at the deposition sites on Saddleworth of the two children who were murdered and buried, and also where we believed that Edward Evans' body was bound for had Brady and Hindley not been arrested. The decision was taken to go to interview Hindley at Cookham Wood Prison. Hindley didn't know we were going. Only the prison governor knew we were going, and we were going to come out. The plan was to come out of the prison and say that we had interviewed Myra Hindley, not discuss the details obviously of the discussions, but then let Brady, scratch his head as to what had happened within that prison interview with Hindley. Everybody told us she was highly intelligent, she was controlling, and she would move heaven and earth to get what she wanted out of this. She was by far the more controlling character at that stage, because obviously Brady was suffering from serious mental problems, and I guess that is what influenced us in the way we progressed this case. We thought we would go and talk to Myra Hindley and get that out of the way, because we wouldn't get anywhere. We knocked on the door, the governor met us and took us in, and he asked Hindley, obviously she was oblivious to all this, he asked her if she would see us, and she said yes. And straight away it became clear that this was a cordial meeting and a positive meeting. And it came as a total surprise to us. We'd been advised by everybody we'd spoken to that she would bat all this off and not engage. She did just the opposite. She was very helpful, very engaging in what we wanted and what we were looking for. We found out very quickly that the mother of Keith Bennett had written to her, and she suggested that had influenced her thought processes in some way, some significant way. So I think we picked by accident, we picked our timing very well indeed. And very quickly in that first conversation, she started talking about pointing out areas of interest to Ian Brady on Saddleworth Moor. We stopped the process pretty quickly, because there was just obviously Myra Hindley and Peter and myself there. We arranged to get her solicitor, who was based in London, to come along that same day, and then the four of us sat in a room and chatted about this. And at the end of that, we had this agreement for her to highlight these areas, and these are her words, not mine, these areas of interest to Ian Brady on Saddleworth Moor, which was, I guess, kind of code for saying, I'll give you a hint as to where the bodies are buried. So we were pretty confident fairly early on that we were going to make progress in this case. She then said at that meeting that she was prepared to visit Saddleworth Moor and point out these points of interest to Brady. And to our frustration, and contrary to what we'd agreed, her solicitor left the prison and went and told the press that Myra Hindley was prepared to go to Saddleworth Moor and point out these sites of interest to Ian Brady. So that's really when the balloon went up, and everybody but everybody was waiting for Myra Hindley to go back to Saddleworth Moor and point out these locations. We approached the whole thing very cautiously, but I mean, there's no doubt about it. We were very enthusiastic about her response, amazed by her response. We were going there really largely as a formality with a view to putting pressure on Brady. So this was a process we were going through, and we were absolutely flabbergasted when she said she was prepared to help in one form or another. Peter Topping had interviewed Ian Brady in Gartree Prison quite early on when this review was launched in 1985. I hadn't seen Brady at that stage. Apparently he was very ill, and the psychiatrists and medics that we spoke to, hospital staff we spoke to at Park Lane, said that he was ill, and I think there was a suggestion from some people that, you know, if we timed this well and we brought the right sort of psychological pressure to bear, we might persuade him to confess to all this. That really didn't happen at that stage. Ian Brady was very, very difficult. I think, you know, first and foremost, we've got to say this guy was seriously mentally ill. He was an intelligent man, but a very controlling character, and made life difficult at every turn. You know, from personal experience, you could go and meet him in prison, agree one course of action with him, and then by the time we'd got back to the office, that had all changed, and he'd written a letter to somebody or he'd phoned somebody, and was just, I mean, an impossible character to deal with, really difficult. I think, you know, just to make the point that both of them had denied everything in their 1966 trial. They had not admitted one solitary aspect of the offences they were charged with. So, you know, there was plenty of territory for him to move, but Peter Topping spoke to him more than I did. Peter went quite a lot whilst I was looking after things on Saddleworth Moor on occasions. I mean, he found him just utterly impossible. He was trying to make deals about, well, I will tell you all about this if you give me means whereby I can kill myself. And one of the other ones he came up with was, well, I will tell you all, I will spill the beans, I will tell you about all this if you let me have I suppose you could describe it as a week out. He wanted a few days out where he could have alcohol, watch films, and generally, and food that he chose. So they were impossible demands, really, but quite bizarre, frankly. I'm pretty comfortable with the thought that Brady was a psychopath. He suffered from schizophrenia, and he was a very sick man, and clearly a very violent man, and I'm sure he would have killed in one way or another, regardless of Hindley's involvement. I've never come across anybody like Brady or with that level of illness, medical illness or psychiatric illness, who could do and say these things. This combination of weird behaviour combined with this controlling and highly intelligent approach, very, very unusual, if not unique, certainly to me anyway. We saw her in the spring of 1986 at Cookenwood Prison, and over a period of 3 days she made a full confession under taped conditions and under caution, of course, to all of the offences. And that's not just the offences they were convicted of in 1966, but also the murders of Keith Bennett and Pauline Reade. The 3-day confession process was complex and very, very time consuming. We went through the whole process informally first and foremost, and only after that did we start the taped, recorded and confession under caution. And again, the 5 of us were there. Myra Hindley, her lawyer, her advisor, her religious advisor, and also Peter, of course, and myself. She was able to say when Leslie Ann Downey was murdered, she was in the bathroom drawing a bath of water and was later presented with a dead child. So these were the sort of accounts she gave, and I guess we'll never know the exact truth of who's right and who's wrong. She fully accepted her part in all this and understood quite clearly that had she not helped Brady, gone along with Brady, these children would not physically have gone with Brady, and he couldn't have abducted them. So I think she was under no illusions as to the seriousness of her part in all this. Once she had said that she was prepared to point out areas of interest to the police, and of course her lawyer had told the media that she was prepared to go back, we came under an awful lot of pressure from the media, really, and others, to get her back to Saddleworth Moor. We applied to the Home Office and they agreed to it, but they imposed very strict conditions on how we might take her back there. Those conditions proved disastrous, really, in many ways, because it became a media circus. The conditions imposed by the Home Office meant that we had to close the moor, we had to close the road, we had to get up there by helicopter, and we had to have an escort. And there were, the conditions were imposed were quite ludicrous, really, and clearly by somebody who had no idea what walking on Saddleworth Moor was all about. I mean, one of the conditions was that she would be handcuffed to a prison officer at all times. And I'm sure anybody who's been up there will know that just walking, you know, with 2 free hands is difficult enough, let alone being handcuffed to people. Fortuitously, we had somebody there from the prison department with a bit of common sense and immediately dropped that precondition. We'd shown Hindley over the various visits we had, mapping, photographs, aerial imagery, all sorts of things about where the remains might be buried. So we were pretty confident that we had 2 graves, and pretty soon she was giving us broad hints as to which one was which. We got her onto the moor. We transported her up from prison by helicopter. The weather was appalling on that day. We'd commandeered a quarry as our working police station. We've got a mobile police station there, and all our staff were there. And we moved out from there to go onto the moor. We had highlighted 2 areas that we felt could be the burial locations of the 2 children. One was Hoe Grain and Shiny Brook, and the other one was on Hollinbrown Knoll, where Leslie Ann Downey's body had been found. We visited both locations. She had a great difficulty in getting her bearings with Hoe Grain and Shiny Brook, simply because we came at it from a route other than the one that she would have taken to it, or they did take in the 60s, and that caused consternation at every level. We then moved to Hollinbrown Knoll, and instantly she got her bearings and she was able to give us some indications as to where the grave might be, or the areas that were of interest to Brady might be. It was on the way back to the quarry where we had our mobile police station. We passed a bridge that runs where Hoe Grain runs under the road, and she pointed out through the window and said, "That's where we used to park the car." Now, this was something we weren't aware of, obviously. So we immediately thought, well, yeah, we've got this wrong. If we'd approached it from there, she would have got her bearings. And really that was I guess, the basis for the second visit. We knew that we'd got it wrong, that she hadn't got her bearings in the morning when we'd looked at Hogrange and Shiny Brook, and we really ought to try that again. And we took her back to Saddleworth Moor and did the job the way she wanted it done, or she had asked for it to be done, and it made eminent sense, really. I think the problems, the difficulties we encountered the first time round were we had to comply with the rules and regulations set out by the Home Office Prison Department in how we cared for Hindley and how we managed the visit. The second time, I think even they had realised that they'd got it wrong, and they gave us absolute control of how we managed the visit. So we brought her up to Saddleworth Moor by car, we hired a camper van, and we visited the various sites really under her control or her direction, so that we were able to stop where she wanted us to stop, we were able to look at things from a position that she wanted to look, and it worked remarkably well. So she took us to where she believed, certainly in Hogrange and Shiny Brook, where Keith Bennett was murdered and secretly buried. And also, of course, at Hollinbrown Knoll, where Pauline Reade was murdered and buried. We'd started searching that year at Hogrange and Shiny Brook for Keith Bennett. The weather in the early summer was excellent, and we were able to get a lot of work done, and then the weather turned, and we had days and days of torrential rain. And really, we were flooded out of the area that we were searching. So we moved to Hollinbrown Knoll, which is a higher point and better drained, and started looking for Pauline Reade. And I think it was on the 1st of July of that year, whilst we were basically line searching into the bog, into the peat moor. And as we were doing this, one of my colleagues said, "Oh, there's a patch of ground there that looks as if there's no vegetation on it." It looked odd, it stood out. But this was a few metres beyond where we were actually digging at that moment in time. And we thought, well, why not? We'll just give it a quick look. I think, unfortunately for Peter Topping, he was at the hospital talking to Brady on that day, so I was there with the rest of the team. And would you believe, with just a few centimetres below the surface, we realised straight away that we'd hit something. I got down on one knee with an archaeological trowel, a pointing trowel, and almost instantly found a white stiletto shoe. And of course we knew that Pauline Reade was wearing a white stiletto shoe at the time she disappeared. We were on the moor, the press were camped out on the road, and we really didn't want to let them know about this development. So we stayed on the moor for a little longer, all sat round and had a cup of tea and patted one another on the back. I mean, you know, fantastic success as far as we were concerned, but also tinged with the sadness that what this would mean to the family. And then I left two of the guys on the moor to obviously mine the body, and we all tromped off the moor, and the press didn't, thank goodness, hadn't counted and didn't know how many of us were on the moor and how many came off. So we left two of the guys there. We couldn't use mobile phones because they were being monitored by the press. So we then drove to the nearest police station, and I rang Peter on a landline and told him that we'd found Pauline Reade. Peter Topping told the family later on. I think the difficulty is at that stage, you can't prove conclusively that this is Pauline Reade we've found, albeit it's 99-point recurring certainty that it is Pauline Reade. So Peter told her father that there had been a development and human remains had been found, and that in all possibility or probability they were those of Pauline Reade. Being able to return the remains of a loved one to the family so that they can go through whatever process they want to go through. It is so important to people because it gives them that one word, that closure. It gives them somewhere to visit. They can go and put flowers on a grave, whereas at the moment they don't know where those remains lie. So I think at that level it is relief for them, but I suppose conversely it's confirmation that their loved one was abducted, murdered and secretly buried, and that must have a profound effect on them also, because all too often people don't know what actually happened, how their loved one became to be in this grave in the middle of nowhere. We were still looking for Keith Bennett's grave, and we'd never know until we got him there whether he could locate it or not. We went straight up there in the early hours of the morning, got him onto the moor. Brady and Hindley used to park their car on the bridge where Hoe Grain runs beneath the A635, and we took him to that point on the morning that we took him there, and we set out from there to walk down Hoe Grain and then onto Shiny Brook. He strode out very purposefully initially, but when we got to Shiny Brook, when we got to the confluence of the two streams, he started to hesitate and clearly couldn't get his bearings and started suggesting that things had been moved. I mean, you know, quite a bizarre suggestion to make. But nothing had been moved between the 60s and the 80s. I'm absolutely 100% satisfied. He didn't know where it was. Had he known where it was, he would have told us, I'm sure. He'd certainly taken us to the same area that Myra Hindley took us. So I think we've always been satisfied that Keith Bennett was taken to that area, was murdered there and buried there. At the end of the physical search, we had to prepare a file of evidence for consideration by the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Attorney General. Our recommendation was that these two should not be charged with the additional murders of Keith Bennett and Pauline Reade, because the only winners would be the media. You know, they were both in prison, they were both serving life sentences, and the chances of them, either of them getting parole was very remote. Around that point, Peter Topping retired from the police service, and whilst the case had effectively been put to bed, there were still aspects of it that were running. So I continued as the sort of proxy senior investigator, if you want, for some years, and kept in touch with Myra Hindley, or more correctly, Myra Hindley kept in touch with me, the other way around, for some years after that. But I moved on, progressed within the police service, and then moved to a post in the Home Office in London in the 90s, and I retired in 97. You know, it's engraved on people's brains in Manchester. I think it's just local, and people know the points, know the locations that are talked about, know where the locations where or the areas where the children were abducted, and it seems, I guess, personal in some way to a lot of Mancunians. And you know, perhaps it will stay that way for years to come yet, until another generation, till the generation dies off and we start again.
Ian Brady and Myra Hindley were never formally charged with the murders of Keith Bennett or Pauline Reade. Keith Bennett's mother, Winnie Johnson, passed away on the 18th of August 2012 without ever finding out where her son was buried. Myra Hindley died on the 15th of November 2002. She was 60 years old. Ian Brady died on the 15th of May 2017. He was 79 years old. Thanks for watching this deep dive into the final chapter of the crimes that shocked Manchester and the world, the Moors murders. This is Matt from Underworld Uncut. Please remember to like, hype and subscribe. It really helps the channel.